Welcome back to my belated annual Oscar series wherein I talk about all the Oscar categories except for the short film ones. I rank all the nominees per category according to who I think deserves to win the Oscar, and then I make a prediction for who I think will win that Oscar. But of course right now I'm talking about the categories from last year since I didn't get to do it then. Now we're gonna continue on with the major awards with Best Original Screenplay. So the nominees are Bridge of Spies, Matt Sharman, Ethan Coen, and Joel Coen. Ex Machina, Alex Garland. Inside Out, Pete Docter, Meg LeFauve, Josh Cooley, and Ronnie Del Carmen. Spotlight, Tom McCarthy and Josh Singer. And Straight Outta Compton, Jonathan Herman, Andrea Berloff, Esli Savage, and Alan Wenkus. Now this is a more or less solid list. There are a few here that I think really deserve the nomination. There's one that I would personally leave off, but again, I feel like I'm very picky with my screenplays. But I personally think this list is better than the adapted screenplay list. Anyway, in terms of who I think should have won the Oscar, at 5th place, don't hate me, I'm gonna put Straight Outta Compton. For the record, I really enjoyed Straight Outta Compton. It's a surprisingly engaging film, and the characters of Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, and Eazy-E are super cool. But what always bothered me about Straight Outta Compton was the fact that, this is a movie about the entire NWA group. And there's pretty much no development for MC Ren and DJ Yella. And I understand that Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, and Eazy-E were the more influential members, and they've definitely had more influence up to the day. But, it's a film about the whole group, so I just feel like they got the short end of the stick, and I really wanted to know more about their role within the group. And apart from that, after a while in the film, it sort of meanders a bit, and it sort of becomes like just the greatest hits of the individual careers of these 5 dudes. So that's why it's at number 5. Now at number 4, again, don't hate me, I'm putting Ex Machina. For the record, again, I love Ex Machina. I think it's a great film. It's like a full-length episode of Black Mirror. And it's pretty much a play as well, because you only really have 3 characters here, but they're so complex and they're so layered, and when they interact with each other, like, it's always different. But the screenplay has a ton of deception going on in it as well. It's the kind of movie where you don't really know if people are lying to each other. Then if you watch the whole thing a second time, some of it kind of comes off differently. And the final message, the final theme of Ex Machina is really haunting and will stay with you for a while after you see the movie. The only reason why it's at number 4 is there's just one little thing that happens towards the end that I just, was kind of like, I'm not so sure about that. And yes, that small nitpick is the thing that puts it down to number 4. Now, at number 3, surprisingly, I'm going to put Bridge of Spies. And I really have to rewatch Bridge of Spies one day, but as of now, I think it's a fully deserving nominee for Best Original Screenplay, because I do think the story in Bridge of Spies is a beautiful one. It's about humanity, it's about people kind of, showing justice and kindness to each other even when politics kind of puts up these walls. And the 2 main characters in this movie, played by Tom Hanks and Mark Rylance, they really do kind of challenge your own beliefs. Because I really believe that in this world today, like, there's no way this story could have ever happened, but thanks to these 2 people, some lives were saved. And I know a lot of people were not impressed by Bridge of Spies and thought it was boring and run-of-the-mill. I understand that, but me personally, I was genuinely intrigued by the Cold War plot. I liked how it was like a realistic spy film, and I was on the edge of my seat for pretty much the entire film. Now, these last 2 were really hard to pick between. They're both such incredible films to me, and it was so painful having to pick one screenplay over another, but this is what I ended up with. So at number 2, I am giving it to Spotlight. Spotlight's screenplay is a perfect example of how to tell a great procedural story, because that's really what Spotlight is. It's really just these investigative journalists trying to crack open this case about pedophile priests. So similar to The Big Short, it has a lot of information to deal out, but the way it communicates this information is done so efficiently and so well, because the characters still remain fully realized and well defined, and you can still tell one apart from the other. And with all the facts of the case, every single fact matters. You know how each piece of information fits within the larger picture, and you really get to solve it alongside them. What's great about Spotlight as well is that you get insight into the newspaper industry as well. You understand that They can't just break a story when they have just a bit of evidence. Like, they have to wait till they crack open the entire thing, and I just found that like a really interesting aspect that they didn't have to add into the film. And finally, at number one, I think the movie that deserved to win Best Original Screenplay was Inside Out. Again, I mentioned this before, but what Inside Out does is so smart. It condenses scientific concepts into an accessible enough story and dialogue for a family film, but it doesn't dumb it down necessarily. They create a world where, you know, the internal logic is sound enough. Like, obviously it's not gonna stand up to scrutiny if you end up like applying lots of different scientific concepts, but for what this movie is trying to be, like, it's perfect. Like, the writing is perfect for the film, and what I love about the story in it is that there's no good or evil here. There's no antagonist. It's really just growing up. And of course, for a movie that stars emotions, it's an unbelievably emotional ride that accomplishes its big emotional moments through the simplest gestures. And, you know, Pixar does a lot of emotional moments, but some of them really are, you know, grand and big. But here, the reason why I cried during Inside Out is because of how simple and relatable and universal the tear-jerking moments were. Now, as for my prediction as to who I thought was going to win the Oscar, I gave it the spotlight, and the Academy also gave it the spotlight. Like I mentioned in the adapted screenplay video, the Academy likes dialogue-heavy films that are based on true stories, and Spotlight checks those boxes. But, you know, I'm not mad Spotlight won, because it's such an incredibly important film, and it's nice to see a movie that's so old school in its filmmaking win an award like this. Alright, so those are my thoughts on the Best Original Screenplay category. What do you guys think of this category? What do you think of the nominees? Who do you think should have won? Who do you think was going to win? Whatever you thought, whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.